Thank you. So I just want to assure everyone you are going to have more time to give reflections, ask additional questions after this next segment that we're going into. But we did want to have an opportunity to have a panel talk about managing federal challenges and lessons learned. Many of the questions that you all have asked have really come out of how do we take advantage of this opportunity given the capacity limitations and the requirements of the federal government. So Melissa Miles, the executive director of the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, is going to moderate a panel with Hazel Applewood, the CEO of Ironbound Community Corporation, John Compton, the executive director of the Center for Environmental Transformation, and Dwayne Tyndall, executive director of Alternatives for Community and Environment. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa now this is a great panel. This is exciting. So there you go, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Sarita. So glad to see my panelists here, folks that I really respect and have been working with for some time now. Dwayne's under ACE if you're looking for him, Christine. So just to set up the panel a little bit, this is an extension of what I spoke about in the intro, which is just, really giving us an opportunity to think about and to play within our minds the idea of what it would look like for our organizations to be able to benefit from this federal funding, specifically in this moment, but also being aware that there are challenges, and the EPA has done their best, I think, to address some of those challenges through standing up the TIC-TACs, through the grant makers, through their own technical assistance, but we understand that there may still be gaps. So I'm bringing these three folks here today to talk about, how they surmounted some of those inevitable hurdles that come along with managing federal funding. I want to first go around and have folks introduce themselves. Please tell us a little bit about your organization and the work you do and which federal grants you hold. So again, just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, your organization, the work you do, and which federal grants you hold. So I'll start with John.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I work for a small organization in Camden, New Jersey, and we do environmental advocacy, urban farming, and now flood mitigation planning. And we were awarded a 2022 National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Coastal Resiliency Grant.
Thanks, John. Hazel, would you go next?
Sure. My name is Hazel Applewhite. I am the CEO for Ironbound Community Corporation. Ironbound is an agency, a 55-year-old agency that's located in the Ironbound section of Newark. We do a large amount of services, right? We do environmental justice work, both at a state, federal, and national level. We do early childhood, community development, a lot of advocacy work, of course, youth programming, domestic violence, financial opportunities, job placement, job training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've been with the agency for a little over 14 years now. I used to serve as CFO, and currently I'm serving as the CEO for the last 2 years. And I am very pleased to serve on this panel and also to share the information that I have.
Thanks, Hazel. Can you name some of the federal grants you hold or which programmatic areas they're in?
Sure. So we currently have Administration for Children and Families that's under Head Start. We've had that grant for over about 15 years now. We have VOCR, which is a domestic violence grant. We have grants from the Office of Safety, the Department of Safety rather, and we're currently working on an EPA grant right now in which we're in the pre-award stage.
Excellent. Thank you, Hazel. Dwayne?
Dwayne Tyndall, Executive Director of Alternatives for Community Environment. We are in Boston, Mass. We are a part of the Strengthening Community Grantmaker Grant, similar to Fordham. And ACE been around 30 years, and we a base building organization. We just a real EJ organization with those transit, public health, housing, youth organizing. Thank you.
Thank you all. So as you can see, very different organizations, all with different degrees of experience with federal funding, grants that are very different. And, hopefully we'll be able to shed a little bit of light on this process for you all. So just jumping right in, I'm going to start with Dwayne. So as you mentioned, you just recently won, you're part of the winning team for the EPA Grant Makers Award for your region. And so your region covers the New England states, as we know. What type of partnerships did you need to create and to apply for the grant? So, who were you talking to in the pre-application stage? How did you nurture and develop those relationships? How did you know who to talk to? And then the same thing, but on the other side, right? Now that you've gotten the grant, who are you working with to actually implement?
So we worked with the Community First Foundation. We also worked with the Climate Justice Alliance. We kind of built our team as we went along. We decided that we needed a strong admin function to kind of manage EPA and take on the resources. So we brought on a large nonprofit organization that has some relationships to communities and neighborhoods. Then we recruited a philanthropic organization, grassroots fund, that have experience in participatory grant making. And then ACE was, in my eyes, was the one that tried to bring the culture of what a neighborhood-based EJ movement principles should look like in a federal grant. So that's how we built out our team. You always need help and strong allies in these grants, from community, from philanthropic sources. I mean, we've been getting help from the Bar Foundation, which is the regional grantor in our region. But you really need someone that could really match EPA expectations relative to, especially in this grant, a very unclear expectations as of right now. So those are our partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. So I heard, community partners, I heard philanthropic partners, grant makers, basically private foundations, as well as technical assistance partners that help you build out the administrative capacity of your organization, as well as larger nonprofits that may have that experience in, managing federal funds. Let's turn to you, John. So when we spoke over a year ago, you were sort of at the start of this federal grant, your first one. So what are some of the challenges that you've encountered in this time? And what solutions have you used to overcome them?
Okay, so we're a very small organization. And as you said, this is our first federal grant. And probably we were awarded this grant a little bit before we were ready. And so there have been many things that we've learned along the way. So I'd like to mention 3 areas that we've had challenges that may help you. One is delays, the second is finances, and the third is contractors. So for delays, we had a grant, in our proposal, we had a calendar for our project. And shortly after being awarded, I heard from another more experienced person that we should expect there to be delays. And that in their experience, they can be up to 2 years before projects start, which shocked me. But at least it prepared me for the fact that we did not have grant activation for 10 months. So you need to have some sort of buffers in place so that you can plan ahead for that. We ended up having to actually cut an entire program that we normally hold every year in order to bide over until we can get our grant activated. You cannot incur costs. And you cannot have any reimbursements until the grant is activated, at least for NIFWIF programs. Second is finances. So as a small nonprofit, we never hit the threshold for needing a financial audit. And now we're going to have enough expenses that we're going to get over the $300,000 budget threshold that we're going to need a financial audit. So in order to prepare for that, we need internal controls that are at a higher standard. We need bookkeeping that is at a higher standard. And there's additional costs associated with those things. So you need to factor that in and be ready. And then since it's the reimbursement grants, you have to have cash available to pay out before you can get reimbursed. And some of the budget items that you have may be for contractors that need to be paid in large chunks of money. And for a small nonprofit like us, if we need to pay out $25,000, that's something we've never done before. So we sought a line of credit, and seeking a line of credit at a bank is a whole other area that we did not know anything about. It took us at least 6 months to secure that. So we finally did that. We had to learn about business credit, which is different from personal credit. And we had denials. We finally did get that line of credit, but that is another hurdle that you need to think about. And then the last area is contractors. You may be contracting out in your grant, and you may be thinking of a contractor that you know and be tempted to write them into the grant, as we did, which can be a mistake because there are federal procurement policies that you must follow, and you must document that you have followed these policies for choosing any contractors. And so you have to have, depending on the amount that you're budgeting for a contractor, you have to have either a proposal or a bid process, and there's rules to follow. So I had to learn about all of that. We had to learn how to write an RFP properly, how to answer questions from contractors, how to hold a pre-proposal meeting, and then we have to write a contract. So you need help with all of these things. And I didn't do this by Googling. I did this by getting help from experienced people. And I think it sounds like through the efforts of this, this seminar and the different resources that have been spoken about today, there's a little bit more help available, and you should definitely take advantage of it because there are things that you cannot anticipate.
Wow, John, thank you so much, for your honesty. I think, your story was definitely one of the ones that led me to, work with the DEP to try to put this together. Because yes, we want many groups to be able to access these sources of funding, but there are realities and tough ones. And, federal money is not philanthropic money. It comes with a different set of rules and a different set of expectations and a different set of back end consequences if they are not met in the right way. So, again, shout out to the technical assistance centers who are helping folks to come online with this. So moving on to Hazel. So Hazel, as you mentioned, you all carry several sources of federal funding, and you have for many years across different programs. What operational structures do you have in place to manage the programmatic, administrative, and financial components of your grants? So you have all these grants, different programs. How are you tracking this all? How are you tracking that the work is getting done, that the money's being spent? Please tell us a little bit about how you all are managing that.
Sure, thank you. It's important to have, obviously, like John said, systems in place. It's also important for folks to be talking within your organization, right? Some of these, some smaller organizations, you have the ED that's kind of leading that writing process with partners, right? It's important for the ED to be talking to the programmatic staff, so everyone is bought into the deliverables of the grant, whether it be programmatic, financials, right? And everybody understands the grant. For tracking, right? Let's talk about the financial part of tracking. It is very important that you have a financial system that's able, or if you're working with a fiscal sponsor, that you are asking the right questions to that fiscal sponsor, that they have the correct systems in place, such as you're doing fund accounting. So if you have a various amount of grants, that you're able to track your EPA grant on one separate grant code. And that those expenses are also aligned to the budget. So your system allows you to either put the budget in, or you're working on an Excel sheet that you have that budget, right? The approved budget, and that you're assuring that you're spending against the budget. So you need to have a financial person that understands non-for-profit accounting and also understands fiscal management and understands how to work with government grants, because that's going to be important to the tracking, to the billing, to understanding the policies. That's very important. Sometimes we see grants, like we're seeing a lot of grants now to apply for. I stress that before you apply for those grants, that you make sure what you're going to be responsible for on the programmatic side, as far as being in compliance and policies, and also on the fiscal side, because then you may get a culture shock, right? Once you dig deeper into it. And that also allows you time to plan. So for example, on the fiscal side, you're going to need a fiscal manual, right? You may have never had to have an in-depth fiscal manual that tells you step by step, how do you do a drawdown? How do you respond to awards? How do you cut your checks, right? Who's signing for your checks? These are all things that federal agencies want to make sure that you have those checks and balances in place. So it's important to have that and have fiscal staff that actually understands that, and that's not being controlled by a programmatic staff or a executive director that may not have experience in that area. No disrespect to executive directors, because I'm one myself, right? But if you don't have a financial background, get someone who has a financial background to help you out here. On the programmatic side, you want to make sure that you have a system in place that's tracking those deliverables. So if you're saying you're going to do, and I'm using this really randomly, right? You're going to build 50 units, right? Or you're going to do, 50 seminars, right? Whatever the project may be, that you are tracking that, and you're also having backup for it, right? You are having backup for everything that you do, whether you're using a tracking sheet, whether you're using a system, you're uploading those backups that you can easily reference it. You understand what the grantor's reporting looks like. So then that will tell you how much detail, how much backup you'll need, and what systems you should have in place. So reading your award letter, right? Understanding pre-award and your award letter, what the expectation is, and then designing systems that then match those award letters, the criterias in the award letters, right? So if the award letter is saying that you need to do a quarterly report, and within the quarterly report, these are the items you need within the quarterly report, you then have a system internally, right, that you can information gather in order to do those reports. You want to also make sure, very important, no silo here. Program needs to be talking to fiscal. Program needs to be talking to payroll. Program needs to be talking to HR, fiscal, payroll. Everyone needs to be talking, right? And this is not only for federal grants. I actually highly encourage you to just have all of these departments talking. We have a tendency to have the silo approach, right? That folks are working, and we know we're doing good work. But if you want to build strong systems and get buy-ins from all level, you want to make sure that all those departments are talking. You want to make sure that your fiscal person is meeting with your programmatic person, whether it's once a month, quarterly. I would recommend if you're the first time getting a federal grant and it's a larger federal grant that you know, in the beginning, you guys are almost meeting weekly. And then you can transition into a monthly meeting that you're actually looking at those numbers and understanding those numbers. And again, I want to stress the fiscal sponsorship. If you're going out there and you're getting someone who's going to be a special sponsor for you, you want to make sure that that person have the capacity, right? And they're aligned. You guys are aligned, right? Because that can also be a disaster story if that's not happening. And like John said, you want to make sure you have the financial capacity. A lot of these grants are reimbursable. You want to find out if the grant gives advances, because that's going to help you. Some grants give 25 advance. You know, that's really going to help you if you're able to do that. If you're not able to do that, then before you get awarded these grants, you want to make sure that, because it's reimbursement. If you're spending $100,000, you want to make sure that you have a way to get that money through the door. You also want to make sure that you have, you know, if you're over the threshold for an audit, you want to make sure that you're getting that audit done, you're getting it done timely, and also that audit is going to have you where you're going to have to prepare schedules, you're going to have your bank recs need to be done. So you want to make sure it goes back to, again, having a strong fiscal department that can manage that process for you. So I hope I answered, you know, what you wanted to answer, Melissa, and I'll be more than happy to add any more if you'd like me to.
Thank you so much, Hazel. So, I mean, I think you really laid a lot of information out there for folks. I love your comment about the EDs, because you're right. You know, NJEJA earlier this year was awarded our first federal grant. We've been pass-through recipients on other grants. Pass-through recipients comes with its deliverables and expectations and reporting, but it is not the same amount of responsibility as holding the grant, you know, as the statutory or a statutory partner or the lead organization. So again, fortunately, there are multiple opportunities for folks to get involved. You know, some of these grants, like the Communities Change, you know, you could apply potentially as a statutory partner. Others, like the grant maker, you can apply as a pass-through recipient. So there are different levels of responsibility that comes with either one. You know, but as you hear, you do need to be thinking about and constructing administrative back office procedures, staffing, whether it's consultants or full-time folks or part-time folks. You know, we should not be sort of going into this kind of situation blindly. And help. You know, one thing we've heard a lot here today, and I can attest to, because, you know, some of these folks I work with closely on my organizational finances, and, you know, as part of my finance team, you know, I think I have 3 members of my finance team on this call today. You know, so it's important to find people who know a lot and, you know, build those relationships and tap into them. So we're coming up to time, but I do want to take a couple of minutes to see if there's a question or two from the participants to illuminate anything that folks think, you know, could use another word or two. Okay. So I don't see any hands or in the chat. So what I'll do then is, you know, again, in a little bit of a round. Oh, okay. So Dr. Bito, would you like to, I think that yours is the first hand I saw. Okay, maybe you could.
Yes, I would just like to uplift, I dropped it in the chat as well. If also some of you can speak to, so my history with grant reporting has been 2 types, 2 dashboard systems. One is more like an analytical resource dashboard, just more access of what you completed as a program. And then the other is more grant reporting oversight. But I wanted you to all speak to amending grant proposals. Because as you go through the process of implementing your program, sometimes you have to make amendments. If you could speak to that.
Got you. Is anybody willing to take that, just because we're pressed for time, so maybe one of you could speak to that? Any takers? Amending grant proposals?
I can jump in there with the amending grant proposal. So are you speaking, just so I understand, after it's awarded?
That's a yes. And, Hazel, also feel free to keep it brief, because I also think a question like that has to really be directed towards, the grant
Sure.
manager of a specific grant, but you can answer, how's that gone for you in the past?
Sure, exactly what you said. You should be in communication with the grant manager, and it has to do with the tracking that you're seeing that you're not going to meet certain deliverables. So on, whether it be on the programmatic side or on the budget side, right, you're asking to revise, the award, but that should be a conversation with your grants manager. And it's really important that you understand the timeline and start that conversation earlier rather than later.
Thank you, Hazel. Nastasia?
Yes, I just had a quick clarifying question on just in what's being described is your organization being the holder of the federal grant versus what Fordham was talking about as a pass-through. Are those requirements the same as what's being discussed, or is that different?
Dwayne, you want to take that one?
What was the question?
The difference between being the holder of the federal grant and being a pass-through recipient.
Well, with the Strengthening Communities, we are the administrative arm of it, similar to Fordham. So we, in Strengthening the Grant, you have the grant, it's a $50 million grant, and it's separated 10 million admin, 40 million pass-through. So since we are on the admin side, we are not a part of the, we are not a part of receiving the $40 million. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Thank you. And just to add a little bit there, basically the recipient organization is the one that has to be in direct communication with the grant making agency. They're the ones who have the legal and fiscal responsibility to make sure that the programs are executed as per contract. They're the ones that if there's any kind of audit or anything like that, it would be them. Whereas the ones who are getting as pass-throughs, they are accountable to the organization that passed it through, not directly to the EPA. There is still responsibility and risk. I mean, there's risk anytime you take money, whether it be private or public monies, but it doesn't come with the same degree of risk or responsibility. But then, also it's more lucrative normally to hold the grant yourself. And I see there's one more question. We'll see if we can get to that one quickly. Phil?
Thank you, Melissa. I think the panel maybe addressed this already, but I'm wondering, so encountering federal and other grants, nonprofits the requirement to be nonprofit frequently excludes fiscally sponsored groups, and it's very costly in terms of costs and labor to get and maintain that full nonprofit status. And I was wondering if the panel has any comments about that for fiscally sponsored groups.
Yeah, I think so. Sarah's putting in the chat that she just, I don't know if it's to answer to that, but dealt with this.
Yeah.
You could, is that you, Sarah?
Yeah, I could
Okay.
share, Melissa, if you'd
Sure.
like. So we just had this issue actually. And so as what it is you have to change the qualification of that partner from a subawardee to something called a support participant. And a support participant then is different qualification, meaning that they don't have to be a 501(c) and they can be partnered with you, but they can't qualify as a subawardee. And this was something that we didn't know initially, and we found out the hard way, and is something we're dealing with right now with one of our partners. But what you can do is still write them in as an other type of expense within your budget. And then they can be called something called a participant support contract. And that is actually sometimes a little bit better because the EPA, what we've learned, does not recognize fiscal sponsors. And so it's actually, as a sub-awardee, they can't be fiscal sponsors. They can't utilize their fiscal sponsor. And as contractors, they cannot be, they have to be corporations, for example. So I'll drop in something about what the support participants are, because I was just reading it yesterday. So I'll send that to you. But that's a way that, at least for us, we're going to be utilizing that other qualification to work with community-based organizations that aren't 501(c)(3)s, because many of them don't want to become 501(c)(3)s, but want to be working in the community and can really be the ones doing the work on the ground. So I'll drop that link for you to help you navigate that as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And for Phil or anyone else that wants more information on that, Sarah did put the information for the TICTAC in there. Again, that is the Technical Assistance Hub for the region. That's the place where you can definitely go with questions like this. So this has been really amazing. And just to tie it off, I'm going to ask everyone just to give our participants 1 or 2 words of advice going into this federal funding process. And John, we'll start with you.
You need to find mentors.
Thank you. Hazel?
Policies, 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 internal policies. Get your policies together.
Thank you. Dwayne?
Realize what you don't know and find those mentors, and like Hazel said, develop those policies to contain this grant. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time and your expertise and sharing your experiences with us all today. I've learned so much, and I will hand it back to you, Sarita.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you to that amazing panel. Very insightful. And it's really important to have opportunities to learn from folks who actually are doing the work, have done the work. So we, in that vein, we want to have about 25 minutes now for all of the participants to just engage in sharing your reflections, ask any additional questions you may have. And this is really to all of the panelists. Thank you all for the details that you put forward. A lot of us, including me, have been curious about how some of these programs are unfolding and what the requirements will be and how to tap into them. And so that has been really helpful to have that information shared. So reflections on the day, what additional things you'd like to know, any other questions you may have. And I'm going to turn it back to Candace to kind of navigate us through this hand-raising portion of the discussion. And we'll do that till 12:55, and then we'll come back and close out and get everybody out on time.
Sounds great. Sherelle.
I was trying to turn on my camera. Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me here. The timing couldn't be better. I'm a community organizer for the East Trenton neighborhood, and we work with the community, the people on the ground. And then when I found out about an environmental justice of lead, 2 years ago, someone's like, Sherelle, you're already working on environmental justice issues. Work on this one. But we didn't think that it could get so big, and that, I mean, there are issues out there. There's real issues, and it's really affecting low-income Black and Brown communities. I am so happy that you guys are here. The timing couldn't be better for me to be able to help my community with the help that they need and the direction that they put forward for the help that they need. It's not people coming in, oh, you need to do this, do that, and then leave, but it's all with the community focus. And I just want to say thank you because the East Trenton neighborhood is faced with a burden of a lot of lead toxins. Our children, even the low levels, our children are having effects with their behavior, with their learning. And because there's like this time gap when they're 2-year-olds crawling because the homes out here, oh my God, poor water infrastructure, poor housing, racism, and poverty, and then environmental justice issues. But because of you, because of Tic Tac, you're helping, and I need help because I need to know how to mobilize. We're working with our city, our local government, our mayor is there, our county is there. We're working with EPA Region 2. We're working with we need DOH. We need the Department of Health. We need their input more. But more than that, I need to learn how to mobilize the residents now and to educate them and to have them all in one place. And I know I can learn that all through Tic Tac. Thank you for doing this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for those reflections, Sherelle. Rose, I saw your hand up earlier, but I think you may have put it down. Feel free to jump in. In the meantime, I have a queue of questions that have been put in the chat throughout the morning. And so let me introduce some of those. And so one from way back when, from Onester, says, what about waste projects? And so what I'm interpreting that to mean is, are waste projects an eligible activity that can be applied for in any of the grants that have been talked about today? So Iris or Dave, if you're still on, can you talk about waste projects and the eligibility to apply for those?
Yeah, by waste projects, I mean, that could include solid waste, hazardous waste. This just depends. Definitely solid waste infrastructure and programs designed for that are eligible under the community change grants. Cleanup of hazardous waste sites would either be a federal lead or state lead. But once the sites are cleaned up, then that property could be eligible for other types of development, right? Whether it's brownfields or a Superfund site that's now has been delisted from the national priorities list.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
The next one from earlier on in the chat is from Jacqueline Bido. You were asking, how will the funding to the national nonprofit organizations be governed so that they don't keep a majority of the funding? So I'm here. Yeah, go for it. Iris, yeah.
I think I was just going to ask for clarification on that question. Did you mean like making sure that they don't? Yeah, I don't think it's possible for them to keep most of the funds because again, there's very strict reporting policies that they have to abide by. There's a certain number of subawards that they have to give out, all those types of things. So it'd be very difficult for an entity to keep federal funds for themselves, just based upon everything that they have to agree to as a grant or as a grantee, and then someone that would be administering subawards. So I hope that's helpful. And I was also going to just drop the solid waste infrastructure recycling grant program that Dave just spoke to, if that may be helpful for the previous question.
Sounds good. And we invite Jacqueline back to add any points of clarity to that question if needed. But for the meantime, we'll move on to the next one from Laura Brinkerhoff. And her question was, what happens to this funding if the administration changes in November?
Go ahead,
the
Dave.
funding. I'm sorry. I was just going to say the funding is here by law. It's here. It's available for us. I don't think and down the road. I don't really think about the administrative changes possibly, but no, this is by statute and it is available for us. And so I think that's pretty much set in stone.
Yes, and to add on to what Dave said, even in government shutdowns, written into law that these programs will continue. So yeah, hope that's helpful.
Great, thanks for that clarity. So is there anyone else who would like to offer a reflection or has additional questions? Rose.
Let's see, sorry. Yeah. Thank you for putting this together. It's made me feel excited about being in this space, but then it's also kind of scary, right? Because you hear all the wonderful things that people are doing while coming up against some obstacles. So, it gives us an opportunity to look at both sides, which is very important from what we think to expect and what we should actually expect. So, thanks for that. My question is, I heard someone spoke about affordable housing or building housing. When you do that, do you have to be the administrator or would you just be like a pass-through on the grant? Does that make sense? Hello?
I think it makes sense, Rose. I think we're looking for a person who can take that question. Dave.
I was just about to say, I cannot answer that question. I don't want to make up stuff, but we can certainly look into that and get back. Okay, that's all right.
Maybe if any of the community-based organizations who have a housing and affordable housing as part of your portfolio would like to offer words of advice in response to that question, please feel free to jump in. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone's taking the bait on that, Rose, but hopefully we can connect you to someone on that specific question. Jacqueline.
I wanted to know, for the organizations that are hosting this, do you have a percentage of under served over marginalized community organizations that you want to help apply? Like, is there a percentage that we should support in like getting you to meet? Have you identified that percentage of organizations that you hope are applying for this funding, at least from the state of New Jersey?
I'm not aware of any percentage, Jacqueline. It's we want to ensure obviously this is one way to get to reach a broader audience. We would really love a good geographic representation, again, in disadvantaged communities. But I have not heard that there's a percentage as a goal. But that's another question I could take back and just get some clarification on. What we don't want to see is like, I'm just going to make something up, 80% of these grants, that's really high, but some very high percentage going to just, like one state or territory, and the rest of the states and territories are not somehow benefiting from this as well.
I also wanted to go back to the previous question about housing. Actually, you know what? We'll find an answer. Yeah, never mind.
Okay, thanks, Iris. I see a question just came in from Doug Freeman. You're saying, how can you see if an organization has already been granted in the area you are considering and what programs will be doing so there are no duplications?
So I would say EPA keeps close track of that. Some of that information is publicly available. Some of that is not, but yes, it's pretty well closely tracked on like who has been granted in what area. There are some grant funding programs, like for example, Clean School Bus, where it can be multiple entities applying for the same like geographic area. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. There shouldn't really be any duplications in something like that. But for example, yeah, but there are certain grant programs where folks can reapply, but it shouldn't be any duplications. So I hope that's helpful. And Dave, I don't know if you want to add on any more.
The only thing I'm just going to add is that, yeah, we do closely track the grant recipients, starting with the award date, right? If an applicant has applied and been initially selected, it's probably not going to be reflected in our database until the actual award has been made. So there, we do have that tracking, and that would be from our grants management department in our regional office, and headquarters has the same thing.
Okay, Jacqueline, you have your hand up again, and then there's a question from Nicole Miller in the chat we'll read out next.
Yes, I just wanted to know, where should we be subscribed to receive the announcements about the funding? Is there a specific site? Because I don't recall receiving the first announcement when this application first opened, so I want to make sure I'm subscribed.
So I'm going to ask Iris if she knows the answer to this question in terms of listservs. I don't know the answer to that. I hope the answer is EPA has a listserv that we can share with folks to make sure that we reach as broad of an audience as possible.
Yes, there are. Jacqueline, I'm about to drop this one. This one is from headquarters, so keeps track of everybody. The Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. You can send a blank email to this email that I'm about to share in the chat. You're welcome.
Nice. Another plug is that the Office of Environmental Justice in New Jersey at the DEP has a newsletter, and my team can drop the link in the chat for you. We'll also include both the information that Iris just shared and all of the information we've shared throughout the day, and the link to sign up for New Jersey's Environmental Justice newsletter, and we share grant opportunities that way as well.
I can attest that NJDEP's newsletter is awesome. So a lot of the same info you'll find in NJDEP's listserv also.
Thanks, Iris. So Nicole is asking, does the school bus program require the old bus to be destroyed, or can it be donated to a school district in need?
So it can be donated, or it has to go to scrap. Like the parts taken apart. Yeah. So both.
Okay. And Dave, your hand is up. Go for it.
Yeah, I want to have, basically, I want to give everybody the chance to ask their questions. I do have just a couple of things to underscore, amplify once we're done with the questions.
Okay, can we get a time check from Sarita? You said till 12:55, right? I think.
Yes, we have until 12:55, so 11 minutes. I'm sorry, 6 minutes.
All right, so I don't see any more hands or questions. Go for it, Dave. Do your plug.
Sure. Yeah, so John, in the previous panel, which was amazing, John Compton and Hazel presented a lot of great information, things to consider. One thing I really want to underscore is the audits that will be coming your way, and those can be daunting. We've seen great grant recipients slip up here and there, and they didn't provide all of the information, say like from 5 years ago, and we will then engage in a what we call letter A and a letter B process, whereby we're saying we need this information. If you cannot provide us with that information within a certain amount of time, we will have to ask you for the cost back. All right, and that's the last thing that we want to do. So I was very excited to see that the Tic Tacs are available for pre and post award for those very sorts of things, to ensure that we are never in that you're never in that situation of having to send money back to the federal government. The other matter I believe John raised was on pre-award costs. Pre-award costs are allowed for competitive grants as long as the budget and performance period is within the budget and performance period. But those pre-award costs are allowed. Page 17 of those FAQs gets into the specific citations and has a little more information. And then as far as reimbursements under the community change grants, the reimbursement process is going to be a very accelerated process. Essentially, there's something called ASAP, which is I'm not sure, it's as soon as possible. They just adopted that name. That within 1 to 2 business days after you submit a reimbursement request, it should hit your bank. So that is an improvement. So I just wanted to plug that.
Thanks, Dave. So another 2 questions have come in. So Quinae Palmer Chambliss, you're saying, what are we doing to make sure that that the majority of grants do not go to white-led 501c3s that have machines in place to successfully go after grants? So are there any efforts to make sure that there's inclusivity or to achieve a diversity of applicants, not just the traditional machines?
Yeah, so I would say to answer that question, a lot of the grants do have a Justice 40 focus. So really just making sure that justice is centered, that it's really making sure that, for example, community change grants, making sure that small community-based organizations are centered. And that's where the technical assistance offered through, for example, community change or We Act is really, really helpful. So we encourage, all of the small organizations to really utilize the technical assistance to be able to get these grants. Dave, I don't know if there's any tracking of who's getting grants based on race and who leads the organization. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. So Dave, I'll let you speak to that. I don't think so. Yeah.
I'm not aware. I mean the major criteria, which does not answer the question that being asked, is that these all have to benefit disadvantaged areas as identified on EPA's IRA map of the nation. So I'm going to do a plug for that map. It's so exciting. You can just drill down, look by census tract on a disadvantaged community, but I'm not sure that we're tracking the racial makeup of the 501c3s. I just can't answer that question right now.
Yeah.
All right, so seeing no other hands up, I'm going to take the last minute of just to take the liberty to do a plug of my own. So I've been seeing in the chat that a lot of you are wanting to meet each other and connect and follow up, and that you've been appreciative of everything that's been shared and talked about today. And so we want to help you to be able to do that, to network and connect with your colleagues, especially because you couldn't do that in person today as we planned. So my Office of Environmental Justice is working on what we're calling an Environmental Justice Directory. And so that's going to be an online database of people who voluntarily agree to have their information be shared in this database. And so the vision and the idea for it is twofold. One, so that applicants that are subject to needing permits from the Department of Environmental Protection can know who to contact and who to reach out to if they are doing stakeholder meetings and public hearings and meetings where they're seeking input and testimony from the communities in which they're looking to locate in, so that they can know who to reach out to and can't say to us, the DEP, oh, sorry, we had a low turnout at the meeting, we didn't know who to reach out to. Now there will be a database online organized by region to say who wants to take on information and who's agreeing to be contacted by facilities is one goal. The second goal is for all of you to have a peer-to-peer networking opportunity to meet people in different regions and to share experiences and best practices and lessons learned. So if you agree, we would love to have you sign up and be an early adopter, someone who's agreeing to sign up on our public environmental justice directory. So my team will drop that in the chat and we'll send it out to you afterwards. We'd love to have, again, a group of early adopters that are going to be publicized and published on this directory so that we can launch it publicly and it's not blank. So you'd be doing a lot to help us out to really populate the directory, and it will be populated and updated as we go along and people agree to be on our list. So hopefully that's a good way for you all to connect with each other, and we'll be looking to plan more events, more webinars, and have in-person, hopefully, opportunities for you to network. So I'll pass it back over to Sarita.
Thank you, Candace. And thank you everyone for great reflections and really good questions, right? And thank you to all of our resource providers, panelists, for being willing to take questions and go back and figure out what some of the answers are for questions that aren't immediately answerable. So with that said, we are gonna hand the podium back over to Melissa. She's going to close us out and talk about some next steps. Before I do that, I just want to take the opportunity to again thank you for your participation. This was an excellent conversation, and I am personally very excited to hear Candace talk about future activities and future events and ways to continue to engage. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa.
Thank you so much, Sarita, for navigating us through the day. I also want to thank the NJEJA team who really worked tirelessly on, just, my desire just a few weeks ago to respond to the, the urgency of this moment and get, work with the DEP to host this seminar. So, just a big shout out to them, to the DEP team, who also just navigated everything so well and professionally, and, are just always very easy to work with. To all of the partners who came on the call from Fordham, from We Act, from the EPA. And I do want to acknowledge that originally we were going to spend half of the in-person day talking about DEP specific funding. So that is still to come. That part is really embedded in the webinars, the seminars that the DEP has been doing around the state. And there are a couple coming up that, the DEP may want to pop into the chat. And I just encourage everyone to keep engaging. I see that a lot of you are signed up for the TIC-TAC webinar on the 26th, where we will be diving into many of the same topics, again, with Dwayne and with Ms. Peggy Shepard from We Act, folks who are holding large federal grants from the perspective of community-based organizations. So we're again going to have an in-depth conversation on how you utilize this moment to actually build out the infrastructure of your organization in a sustainable way, which is not, it's not easy because federal grants, state grants, they're often restricted grants, they're for specific programs, but we all know if you run an organization from program to program, it's going to be hard to have real impact. You need infrastructure, you need leadership, you need staff, you need livable wages, not just livable wages, but wages that folks can thrive on. So, we're really going to have that conversation about, how you grow in a sustainable way through this moment. Because, one thing that I learned from my mentor is that money can also be used to destabilize moments and movements, especially when it's not managed in ways that are sustainable and that are, good for organizations and communities. So, we're going to keep working to make sure that information is out there. So what we ask of all of you is to, to be learners, right? Unfortunately, I don't think there's any organization that functions solely to, you know, provide information. There are some organizations out here that are tracking each grant, and you can find out about those tracking systems through engagement with the Tic Tacs. But we got to engage, right? We got to put on our thinking caps. We got to put on our networking caps, and we have to be willing to do the hard labor. This is not going to happen without labor, I can assure you, and without hard labor. And so, you know, as long as folks are willing to do that deep dive, to do that engagement, to keep trying to learn, you know, I think that no matter what happens, we're going to see a stronger environmental justice and climate justice community coming out of this moment. So, you know, there will be more information coming out from NJDEP. Please subscribe to their newsletter. You can also subscribe to the NJEJA newsletter through our website at njeja.org. You can subscribe to the Tic Tac, plenty of outlets. You know, there's so much. Find your lane. That's just all I can say. Find your lane. There's so many lanes. Anyone right now could lead you to good results. Just you know, but you got to be willing to see it through to the end. So talking about seeing through to the end, thank you all so much for your patience on this morning, this rainy morning. We appreciate you all, and looking forward to see you and you all again soon. Take care.